The rain hit my face like 1,000 tiny accusations, each drop whispering you don't belong here. I was 19, a freshman at Haverford College, standing outside a dive bar in Philadelphia, clutching a fake ID that felt heavier than my conscience. I wasn't here to drink, I was here because he was. And I couldn't stop chasing the shadow of Caleb Pierce. Caleb was 25, the older brother of my classmate, Ethan. I'd known Ethan since we were paired for a sociology project, his easy grin and quick wit making the long library nights bearable. But Caleb, he was a ghost who kept appearing first at Ethan's house, then at the coffee shop where I worked, and now here, in this grimy bar where the air smelled of stale beer and regret. His dark eyes had locked onto mine across the room 10 minutes ago, and I hadn't been able to breathe right since. I wasn't out. Not to my family. Not to my friends. Not even to myself in the mirror most days. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd learned to bury feelings like they were landmines. But Caleb had this way of looking at me, like he could see the parts I'd hidden so well I'd almost forgotten they existed. It scared me. It thrilled me. And tonight, it had dragged me out into the rain, fake ID and all, just to see if he'd look at me again. The bar door swung open, and there he was, leather jacket slick with rain, his dark hair falling into his eyes. "Elliot," he said, my name sounding like a question he already knew the answer to. "You shouldn't be here." "Then why are you?" I shot back, my voice steadier than I felt. My heart was a drumbeat, loud and reckless. He stepped closer, the streetlight casting shadows across his sharp jawline. "Maybe I'm looking for something," he said, his voice low, like he was confessing to a crime. "Or someone." I swallowed hard, the rain soaking through my jacket. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just stood there, caught in his gravity, wondering how I'd ended up in a moment that felt like the edge of a cliff. Caleb wasn't like Ethan. Ethan was safe, predictable, the kind of guy who'd high-five you after a good presentation and forget your name by next semester. Caleb was different, dangerous, not because he was cruel, but because he made you want to be honest. He dropped out of college years ago. Ethan had told me to chase something undefend, a music career. Maybe. Or just freedom. He worked odd jobs now. Bartending. Fixing motorcycles. Living in a tiny apartment above a record store. Ethan talked about him like he was a cautionary tale. But to me, Caleb was a story I couldn't stop reading. That first time I saw him was at Ethan's house, a month into the semester. I'd gone over to work on our project, and Caleb was there, sprawled on the couch with a guitar across his lap, his fingers picking out a melody that felt like it was written for me. He'd glanced up, his eyes catching mine, and said, "You're Elliot, right?" Ethan's friend. His voice had been casual, but his gaze wasn't. It was like he was studying me, peeling back layers I didn't know I had. After that, he kept showing up. At the coffee shop, he'd order a black coffee and sit in the corner, watching me fumble with the espresso machine. Once, he'd fixed my bike when the chain broke, his hands steady and sure, grease smudging his knuckles. Each time, he'd say something small, me name, a joke, a question about my day that left me replaying the moment for hours. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was imagining the way his eyes lingered. But I wasn't. Tonight, in the rain, I couldn't pretend anymore. "Why do you keep doing this?" I asked, my voice shaking now, showing up wherever I am. Caleb's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "Maybe you're the one showing up where I am," he said. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the rain on his jacket, the faint hint of cigarette smoke. "Or maybe," he added, softer, "we're both just bad at staying away." My breath caught. I wanted to laugh it off, to say something sarcastic, but my mind was a blank. All I could think was how close he was, how the world had narrowed to the space between us. Then a car horn blared, shattering the moment, and Caleb stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Come on," he said, nodding toward the bar. "You're soaked. Let's get you a coffee or something." I followed him inside, my heart still racing, my mind a tangle of questions. Why was he here? Why was I here? And why did it feel like every step I took toward Caleb was a step toward something I couldn't name but desperately wanted? Inside, the bar was warm and loud, the kind of place where secrets got drowned in whiskey and bad decisions. Caleb slid into a booth, and I sat across from him, my wet jacket sticking to the vinyl. He ordered us coffees, and when the waitress left, he leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his eyes searching mine. "So, Elliot," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "What's your deal? Why do you keep looking at me like you're trying to solve a puzzle?" I froze. He'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed. I opened my mouth to deny it, to say something flippant, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I said, "I don't know. Maybe I'm just curious." "Curious," he repeated, like he was tasting the word. "About what?" "About you," I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "About why you're always there. About what you want." He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his eyes dark and steady, like he was seeing straight through to the parts of me I'd spent years hiding. "Maybe I'm curious too," he said finally. "About you." The coffee arrived, steaming and bitter, but I barely noticed. All I could think was that this moment, this conversation, this bar, this man was a line I was crossing, and there was no going back. The bar's neon lights buzzed above us, casting a red glow across Caleb's face, making him look like a figure from a dream I wasn't sure I was allowed to have. I gripped my coffee mug, the heat grounding me as my mind spun. Caleb's words, "Maybe I'm curious too," hung in the air, heavy with possibility, and I didn't know how to respond without betraying the storm inside me. "Curious about what?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was fishing, desperate for him to say something that would make sense of the pull I felt toward him. Caleb leaned back, his leather jacket creaking, and ran a hand through his damp hair. "About why a kid like you, with your whole life figured out, college, grades, future, keeps showing up in places like this." He gestured at the bar, at the cracked vinyl booths and the sticky floor. "You don't belong here, Elliot. So why are you?" I bristled at kid. "I'm not a kid," I said, sharper than I meant. "And I don't have anything figured out. You don't know me." "Don't I?" His eyes narrowed, not cruel but piercing, like he was daring me to lie. "I see you, Elliot. At Ethan's. At the coffee shop. On that busted bike of yours. You're always watching, waiting, like you're looking for something you're afraid to find." My face burned. He was too close to the truth, and I hated how exposed I felt. "Maybe I'm just trying to live," I said, deflecting. "Not everyone's got it all together like you think." Caleb laughed, a low, rough sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Together? Me? You're barking up the wrong tree. I'm a mess, Elliot. Dropped out, drifting, barely keeping my head above water. Ethan's the golden boy, not me." "Then why do you keep showing up?" I pressed, echoing my question from outside. "You're not here for the coffee." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "Maybe I like the view," he said, and there was something in his tone half teasing, half serious that made my stomach flip. I wanted to push harder, to demand answers. But the waitress came back, breaking the tension. She slid a plate of fries between us, saying, "On the house, Caleb," with a wink. He nodded, unfazed, like he was used to charming his way through life. I wondered how many people fell for that crooked smile, that effortless confidence. I wondered if I was one of them. "Eat," he said, pushing the plate toward me. "You look like you haven't had a real meal in days." I grabbed a fry, more to have something to do with my hands than because I was hungry. "You don't have to take care of me," I muttered. "Maybe I want to," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. My heart stuttered, and I looked up, but he was staring at the table, his jaw tight, like he'd said too much. The rest of the night passed in a blur of small talk and stolen glances. He told me about the band he'd played in, how they'd almost made it before falling apart. I told him about Ohio, about the suffocating quiet of my hometown, though I left out the part about my dad's sermons on sin and my mom's silent agreement. We danced around the real stuff, the things we weren't ready to say, but every word felt like a step closer to something dangerous. When we left the bar, the rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and sharp. Caleb walked me to my bike, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "You okay to get home?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, though I wasn't sure I meant it. Home was a dorm room I shared with a guy who snored and left pizza boxes everywhere. It wasn't where I wanted to be. Not tonight. "Elliot," he said, stopping me as I unlocked my bike. "Don't come back here. This place, it's not for you." "Then where is?" I asked, my voice raw. "Where am I supposed to go?" He didn't answer, just looked at me like he was memorizing my face. Then he turned and walked away, his boots splashing in the puddles, leaving me alone with my questions. The next week was torture. I saw Caleb everywhere, in the flicker of a stranger's jacket, in the strum of a busker's guitar. Ethan noticed me zoning out during our study sessions, joking that I was lovesick or something. I laughed it off, but the word stuck, sharp and unwelcome. Lovesick. Was that what this was? I didn't know. All I knew was that Caleb had cracked something open inside me, and I couldn't close it again. I tried to focus on school, on the sociology project, on anything but him. But then, Friday night, I got a text from an unknown number, coffee shop. 8 p.m. Come alone. My heart leapt into my throat. It had to be him. I showed up early, my palms sweaty, my mind racing. The coffee shop was quiet. Just a few students hunched over laptops. I took my usual spot behind the counter, pretending to work. But my eyes kept darting to the door. At 8:05, he walked in, his leather jacket swapped for a dark hoodie, his hair messy from the wind. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just walked straight to the counter and said, "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "About why you're here," he said, "and why I can't stop thinking about you." The coffee shop's fluorescent lights hummed above us, but all I could hear was Caleb's voice, low and deliberate, cutting through the chatter of the few late-night customers. "I can't stop thinking about you." The words hung between us, raw and unapologetic, and I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I gripped the counter, my knuckles white, trying to anchor myself in a moment that felt too big, too real. "Say something," Caleb said, his dark eyes locked on mine. He was leaning forward, his hands braced on the counter, close enough that I could see the faint scar above his eyebrow, the way his jaw tightened like he was bracing for a blow. My voice cracked, and I hated how small it sounded. "I don't know what you mean." It was a lie, and we both knew it. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He exhaled, sharp and frustrated. and ran a hand through his hair. Don't do that. Elliot. Don't play dumb. You feel it too, I know you do. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off like I had with Ethan's teasing. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I busied myself wiping the counter, avoiding his gaze. I'm working, I mumbled. Can we talk later? No, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. We talk now. You've been dodging this for weeks, and I'm done waiting. I froze, the rag still in my hand. Dodging. He was right. Every time he showed you-pad Ethan's. At the shop, in the rain outside that bar, I'd found a way to sidestep the truth. Not just about him, but about myself. About the part of me I'd buried back in Ohio. The part that woke up every time he looked at me. Okay, I said finally, setting the rag down. Talk. He glanced around, making sure no one was close enough to hear, then leaned in closer. I don't know what this is, he said, his voice quieter now, almost vulnerable. But every time I see you, it's like I'm waking up, like I've been sleepwalking my whole life. And you're the first thing that feels real. My breath caught. I'd expected a lot from Caleb teasing. Maybe. Or that cocky charm he wore like armor, but not this. Not honesty that felt like it could break me. You don't even know me, I said. But the words sounded weak. Like I was trying to convince myself. I know enough, he said. I know you're scared. I know you're trying so hard to be someone you're not. And I know you're running from something. Same as me. I flinched. He was too close. Peeling back layers I wasn't ready to show. You don't get to say that, I snapped, my voice sharper than I meant. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what I stopped. My throat tight. I couldn't say it. Not the sermons. Not the silences at home. Not the nights I'd spent praying to be someone else. Caleb's expression softened, but he didn't back down. Then tell me, he said. Tell me what it's like. Because I'm here, Elliot. And I'm not going anywhere. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But trust wasn't something I'd ever been good at. Not when every instinct told me to hide. I can't, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Not here. Not now. He nodded, like he'd expected that. Okay. But when you're ready, I'll be here. He slid a piece of paper across the counter, a napkin with his number scrawled in black ink. Call me. Anytime. I took the napkin, my fingers brushing his, and the contact sent a jolt through me. He held my gaze for a moment longer, then turned and left, the bell above the door jingling in his wake. I stood there, staring at the napkin, my mind a mess of fear and longing. The rest of my shift was a blur. I spilled coffee, mixed up orders, and nearly dropped a tray of mugs. All because I couldn't stop thinking about him. About what he'd said. About what I hadn't. When I finally clocked out, I rode my bike back to the dorm, the napkin burning a hole in my pocket. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Caleb's words echoing in my head. You're running from something. Same as me. He was right. I'd been running my whole life from my dad's voice booming from the pulpit, from my mom's disappointed sighs, from the kid in high school who'd called me names I tried to forget. But running from Caleb, that was harder. Because every time I saw him, I wanted to stop. The next day, I went to Ethan's to work on our project, half hoping, half dreading I'd see Caleb. Ethan was his usual self, sprawled on the couch with a laptop, tossing out ideas while eating chips. You okay, man? He asked, squinting at me. You look like you saw a ghost. I'm fine, I lied, but my eyes kept drifting to the staircase, to the hallway where Caleb's old room was. Ethan didn't notice. too caught up in his notes. But I couldn't focus. All I could think about was that napkin, still in my pocket, and the choice it represented. By the time I left Ethan's, the sun was setting, painting the Philly suburbs in shades of orange and pink. I was halfway to my bike when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, Caleb, leaning against a tree, his hoodie pulled up, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, but the glint in his eyes said otherwise. "You live here," I pointed out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Kind of hard to avoid you." He grinned, quick and sharp. "Maybe I don't want you to avoid me." My heart skipped. "Caleb, I don't." He cut me off, stepping closer. "Don't say you can't. Just come with me. 5 minutes. Please." Against every instinct, I nodded. And as we walked into the fading light, I knew I was stepping into something I couldn't control, but for the first time, I didn't want to. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves as Caleb led me down a quiet street near Ethan's house. We walked in silence, the only sound our footsteps and the distant hum of traffic. My heart was a live wire, sparking with every glance he threw my way, his dark eyes catching the last of the sunset. I didn't know where we were going, but for once, I didn't care. I just wanted to be near him. He stopped at a small park, empty except for a creaky swing set and a bench under an old oak tree. He sat on the bench, patting the space beside him. I hesitated, then sat, the wood cold through my jeans. "So," he said, flicking his cigarette away, "you gonna tell me what's going on in that head of yours?" I laughed, a nervous sound. "You first." He smirked, but there was something softer in it, less guarded. "Fair enough." He leaned back, staring at the sky, now bruised with purple. "I've been a mess for a while. Elliot. Dropped out. Pissed off my family. Burned every bridge I had. Thought I was chasing freedom. But half the time, I don't even know what I'm running from." I swallowed, his words hitting too close to home. "Then why stick around here? Why not leave?" He turned to me, his gaze steady. "Because of you." My breath stopped. I opened my mouth to protest, to say he was wrong, but he held up a hand. "Don't. Just listen. I saw you that first day at Ethan's, all nervous and quiet, like you were carrying the weight of the world. And I thought, that guy's got a story. I wanted to know it. Still do." I looked away, my throat tight. "There's nothing to know," I said, but the lie tasted bitter. "I'm just me. Boring. Small-town kid trying to survive college." "You're not boring," he said, his voice fierce. "You're scared. Maybe. Hiding. Definitely. But boring. No way. I see you. Elliot. You're like a song I can't stop hearing." My face burned, and I was glad for the dark. "You don't know what you're talking about," I mumbled, but my heart was racing, traitorously thrilled. "I know enough," he said, echoing his words from the coffee shop. He shifted closer, his knee brushing mine, and the contact sent a jolt through me. "I know I'm not crazy for feeling this, and I know you feel it too." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but I couldn't. Not when his voice was so sure. Not when his presence made the world feel sharper, brighter. "What if I don't know what I feel?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Then figure it out," he said, not unkindly. "But don't run from it. Not from me." We sat there, the silence stretching, heavy with things unsaid. I wanted to tell him everything about the church pews that felt like cages, about the kid I'd been too afraid to be, About the nights I'd lain awake wondering why I couldn't just be normal. But the words stayed locked inside, too heavy to lift. Instead, I asked, "What's your story, Caleb? Why are you really here?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I told you, I'm a mess. Grew up trying to be what my dad wanted, star athlete, straight A student. But I couldn't. Not after I figured out who I was." He paused, his eyes distant. "I came out to my parents when I was 17. Dad threw me out. Ethan was the only one who stuck by me, even when it cost him." My stomach twisted. I'd known Caleb was different, but hearing it, knowing he'd been through that, made my own fears feel small. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "Don't be," he said, his voice rough. "It made me who I am, and it brought me here. To you." I didn't know what to say to that. My mind was a tangle of fear and want, of everything I'd been taught to hate about myself and everything I felt when I looked at him. So I didn't say anything. I just sat there, letting his words settle, letting his presence anchor me. The next few days were a blur of classes, study sessions, and stolen moments replaying that night. I kept Caleb's napkin in my pocket, running my thumb over the ink like it was a talisman. I didn't call him. Not yet. But I wanted to. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt, hoping it was him. Ethan noticed something was off. "Dude, you're acting weird," he said one afternoon, tossing a pencil at me during a study session. "What's up? You got a secret girlfriend or something?" I laughed, too loud, and shook my head. "No. Just stressed. Midterms. You know." He didn't buy it, but he let it go, launching into a rant about our professor. I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere. On Caleb's voice, his eyes, the way he'd said to you like it was a promise. That weekend, I saw him again. I was at the record store near campus, flipping through vinyls I couldn't afford, when he appeared, leaning against a rack of old jazz albums. "Fancy meeting you here," he said, his grin teasing but warm. "You following me now?" I shot back, trying to keep it light, but my pulse was already racing. "Maybe," he said, stepping closer. "Or maybe you're just everywhere I want to be." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't hide my smile. We ended up spending the afternoon together, wandering the store, talking about music and movies and nothing at all. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other forever. But every brush of his arm against mine, every shared laugh, felt like a spark, building towards something I wasn't sure I was ready for. By the time we parted ways, the sun was low, and I was dizzy with possibility. "Call me," he said as he left, his voice half command, half plea. I nodded, clutching the napkin in my pocket, knowing I was running out of reasons to stay away. The napkin with Caleb's number sat on my desk for 3 days, taunting me every time I glanced at it. I'd pick it up, start to dial, then stop, my thumb hovering over the call button like it was a detonator. What was I so afraid of? Him? Myself? Or the moment when everything I'd buried would finally break free? It was a Tuesday night, the dorm quiet except for my roommate's snoring. When I finally caved, my hands shook as I typed out a text. "Hey, it's Elliot. Can we meet?" I hit send before I could overthink it, then stared at my phone, half expecting no reply. But within minutes, it buzzed, "Parked by Ethan's. 9 p.m. I'll be there." I got there early. The same park where we'd sat on the bench, the swing set creaking in the breeze. The air was colder now, late October wrapping the Philly suburbs in a chill that matched the knot in my stomach. I sat on the bench, my breath fogging, and waited. Caleb showed up right on time, his hoodie swapped for a dark coat, his hands in his pockets, He didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. "You called," he said finally, his voice soft but carrying that edge that made my skin hum. "Yeah," I said, staring at my hands. I don't know what I'm doing." He laughed. A quiet, warm sound. "Join the club." I looked at him, his face half lit by the streetlight, and something in me cracked. "Why me?" I asked, the question spilling out before I could stop it. "You could be anywhere, with anyone. Why do you keep coming back to me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out, his hand hovering near mine, like he was asking permission. When I didn't pull away, he took my hand, his fingers warm against my cold skin. "Because you're real," he said. "Not like the guys I meet at bars or gigs. All flash and no substance. You're like me, trying to figure out who you are in a world that doesn't make it easy." My throat tightened. His hand in mine felt like a lifeline, but also a weight, pulling me toward a truth I wasn't sure I could face. "I'm not like you," I said, my voice shaking. "You're out. You're free. I'm still hiding." "You think I'm free?" He let out a bitter laugh. "I'm not. I'm just better at pretending. Every day, I'm still fighting the same crap you are, judgment. Fear. The voice in my head telling me I'm not enough. But when I'm with you, that voice gets quieter." I stared at him, his words sinking in, heavy and true. For the first time, I saw the cracks in his confidence, the vulnerability he hid behind that leather jacket and crooked smile. And it made me want to be brave, just for him. "I've never told anyone," I said, my voice barely audible. "Back home, my dad's a pastor. My mom's his shadow. I stopped, the words choking me. "They'd hate me if they knew." Caleb's grip on my hand tightened. "They don't get to decide who you are," he said fiercely. "You do. And whoever that is. Elliot. It's enough. It's more than enough." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to lean into him, to let go of the fear that had chained me for years. But instead, I pulled my hand away, the cold air rushing in where his warmth had been. "I need time," I said, hating how weak it sounded. He nodded, his eyes soft but steady. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." We sat there a while longer, the silence easier now, like we'd crossed some invisible line. When we finally parted, he hugged me quick, fierce, his breath warm against my ear. "You're not alone," he whispered, and then he was gone, his footsteps fading into the night. The next week, I threw myself into school, trying to drown out the noise in my head. But Caleb was everywhere, in the music I listened to, in the way the light hit the campus trees, in the dreams that woke me up breathless. Ethan started to notice, his jokes about my secret girlfriend turning into genuine concern. "Seriously, man, what's up?" he asked one day, cornering me after class. "You're, like, checked out half the time." I wanted to tell him. I wanted to say, "It's your brother. It's Caleb." But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I shrugged, muttering something about stress, and changed the subject. That Friday, Caleb texted again, record store. 7 p.m. Bring your bad taste in music. I laughed despite myself, the tension in my chest easing just a little. When I got there, he was waiting, holding a vinyl of some obscure punk band. "This," he said, waving it at me, "is art. Your pop garbage doesn't compare." "Excuse you," I shot back, grabbing a Taylor Swift album from the rack. "This is culture." He laughed, loud and unguarded. And for a moment, I forgot to be afraid. We spent hours there, arguing over music, brushing shoulders in the narrow aisles, stealing glances when we thought the other wasn't looking. It was the closest I'd ever felt to free. But freedom doesn't last in a world that loves cages. That night, as we left the store, I saw Ethan across the street, his eyes narrowing as he spotted us. "Elliot," he called, his voice sharp with confusion. "What the hell are you doing with Caleb?" Ethan's voice cut through the evening like a blade, sharp and accusing. I froze, the vinyl I'd bought still tucked under my arm, my heart slamming against my ribs. Caleb, beside me, went still, his easy grin replaced by a guarded look I hadn't seen before. "Ethan," I said, my voice cracking. "We were just hanging out." Hanging out. Ethan's eyes flicked between us, his brow furrowed. "Since when do you and Caleb hang out?" He stepped closer, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his confusion hardening into something else: suspicion. Maybe. Or betrayal. Caleb stepped forward, his hands raised like he was calming a wild animal. "Relax, little brother. We ran into each other at the store. No big deal." But it was a big deal. I could see it in Ethan's face, the way his jaw tightened, the way he looked at me like I was a stranger. "You didn't mention this," he said to me, his voice low. "Why didn't you tell me?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What could I say? That I was falling for his brother. That every moment with Caleb felt like a rebellion against everything I'd been taught to be. I just stood there, mute, my face burning. "Ethan, chill," Caleb said, his tone sharper now. "It's not Elliot's job to report to you." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Don't tell me to chill. You're always pulling this crap. Caleb. Showing up, messing with people's heads, then bailing. Leave Elliot out of it." The words hit like a punch. Caleb flinched. Just barely. But I saw a crack in his armor. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice low. "Dangerous." "Then explain it." Ethan shot back. "Explain why you're hanging around my friend like some creep." "Stop it," I snapped, finally finding my voice. "Both of you. It's not what you think." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure what it was. All I knew was that I didn't want Ethan looking at me like that, like I'd betrayed him. And I didn't want Caleb to bear the brunt of his anger. Ethan stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then he shook his head, muttering, "Whatever, man," and walked away, his footsteps heavy on the pavement. I watched him go, guilt twisting in my gut. Caleb let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. "That went well," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. For Ethan. For not saying more. For the mess we were making. "Don't be," Caleb said, his eyes softening as he looked at me. "He's just protective. Always has been. He'll get over it." But I wasn't so sure. Ethan and I weren't best friends. But we'd been close enough that this felt like a fracture. One I didn't know how to fix. And worse, I didn't know how to keep Caleb in my life without breaking more things: friendships, family, myself. "Come on," Caleb said, nodding toward his motorcycle parked nearby. "Let's get out of here." I hesitated, glancing down the street where Ethan had disappeared. But Caleb's hand brushed my arm, and the warmth of it pulled me back. "Okay," I said, and climbed on behind him, my arms wrapping around his waist as the engine roared to life. We rode through the city, the wind sharp against my face, the lights blurring into streaks of color. I held on to Caleb, my cheek pressed against his back, and for a moment, I let myself forget everything: Ethan, my parents, the weight of my secrets. There was just this, the rumble of the bike. The beat of Caleb's heart under my hands. The feeling of being alive. He took me to a diner on the edge of town. A 24-hour place with flickering neon and waitresses who called everyone Han. We slid into a booth, and he ordered us milkshakes. His grin back in place like nothing had happened. But I could see the tension in his shoulders. The way his fingers tapped the table. Ethan's not wrong, he said after a while, staring at his shake. I do mess things up. Always have. I don't want to do that to you. You're not, I said, too quickly. You're the only thing that makes sense right now. He looked at me, his eyes searching, like he was trying to decide if I meant it. You don't know what you're signing up for, Elliot. I'm not some hero. I'm just a guy who's been knocked down too many times to pretend I've got it together. Maybe I don't want a hero, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Maybe I just want you. The words hung there, raw and reckless. And for a moment, I thought I'd gone too far. But then Caleb smiled. A real smile. Soft and unguarded. And it was like the sun breaking through clouds. You're gonna be trouble, he said. But there was no bite in it. Just warmth. We talked for hours. The diner emptying around us. The world shrinking to just our booth. He told me about his dad kicking him out. About the years he spent couch surfing. Playing gigs and dive bars. Trying to find a place to belong. I told him about Ohio. About the church that felt like a prison. About the kid I'd been too scared to be. It was the most honest I'd ever been. And it felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. By the time we left, it was past midnight. The air cold and sharp. Caleb drove me back to my dorm. The bike's engine a low growl in the quiet night. When we stopped, he turned to me, his eyes serious. You don't have to decide anything tonight, he said. But I'm here, Elliot. Whenever you're ready. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. As he rode off, I stood there, watching his taillights fade, knowing I was already in too deep. The next morning, I woke to a text from Ethan, we need to talk. Coffee shop. Noon. My stomach sank. I'd been avoiding him since the record store, hoping he'd let it go. But Ethan wasn't the type to let things fester. I dragged myself out of bed, the weight of last night's honesty with Caleb still heavy on my shoulders, and headed to the shop. Ethan was already there, sitting at a corner table, his arms crossed, his face a mix of hurt and frustration. I slid into the seat across from him, my hands fidgeting with a sugar packet. Hey, I said, lamely. Hey, he repeated, his voice sharp. That's all you've got. What the hell's going on? Elliot. You and Caleb, what's the deal? I swallowed, my mouth dry. It's not. It's complicated. Complicated. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He's my brother. Man. I know him. He's reckless. Always has been. He pulls people in, then leaves them in the dust. I don't want that for you. I wanted to defend Caleb, to tell Ethan he was wrong. But part of me wondered if he was right. Caleb had said it himself was a mess. Always burning bridges. But the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel like I could be myself, that wasn't nothing. He's not like that, I said finally. Not with me. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't get it, do you? He's my brother. But he's trouble. Always has been. And Yuri, my friend. I don't want you getting hurt. I can handle myself, I said. But the words felt hollow. Could I? I'd spent my whole life hiding, playing it safe. Caleb was the opposite of safe. And I was diving in head first. Ethan shook his head, leaning back. Just be careful. Okay. I don't know what's going on with you two. But I know Caleb. He doesn't stick around. I nodded. But my mind was already elsewhere, replaying last night at the diner. Caleb's smile, the way his hand felt in mine. Ethan's warning lingered. But it couldn't drown out the truth. I was falling for Caleb. And I didn't want to stop. That afternoon, I texted Caleb, "Can we meet? Same park. 6 p.m. He replied instantly, "I'll be there." My heart leapt. A mix of nerves and excitement. And I spent the day distracted, barely hearing my professor's lectures. When I got to the park, Caleb was already there, sitting on the bench, his coat pulled tight against the October chill. He looked up as I approached, his eyes warm but cautious. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, sitting beside him. "Ethan's pissed. He thinks you're going to hurt me." Caleb's face darkened. "He's not wrong to worry. I've got a track record." "But Elliot," he turned to me, his voice low, urgent. "I'm not playing games with you. This is real." I believed him. I had to. Because if I didn't, I'd have to face the possibility that this whatever it was a mistake. And I wasn't ready to let go of the one thing that made me feel alive. "I know," I said. "I'm scared. But I'm here." He reached for my hand. And this time, I didn't pull away. We sat there, fingers intertwined, the world quiet around us. For the first time, I let myself imagine what it could be like to be with him. To stop hiding. To be free. It was terrifying. But it was also everything. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Caleb and I stole moments whenever we cootled late-night rides on his motorcycle. Quiet afternoons at the record store. Stolen kisses in the park when no one was around. Each one felt like a rebellion. A middle finger to the voice in my head that sounded like my dad's sermons. But it wasn't easy. Ethan grew distant. Our study sessions tense and quiet. I caught him watching me sometimes, like he was trying to figure out who I was. One night, Caleb took me to a small music venue, a cramped basement where a punk band thrashed on stage. We stood at the back, his arm around my shoulders, and I felt like I belonged not just to him, but to myself. When the band played a slow song, he pulled me closer, his lips brushing my ear as he whispered, "You're braver than you think." I wanted to believe him, but bravery felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Not when my parents called every Sunday, their voices full of expectations I couldn't meet. Not when I still flinched at the thought of anyone knowing. But with Caleb, I could almost believe I was enough. Then, one night, everything changed. We were at his apartment, a tiny place above the record store, cluttered with vinyls and guitar picks. We'd been kissing, slow and careful, when my phone buzzed. I ignored it, but it buzzed again, then again. When I finally checked, my blood ran cold. It was a voicemail from my mom. "Elliot," she said, her voice tight, "Your dad's hurt some things. We need to talk. Now." My mom's voicemail echoed in my head, each word a stone sinking in my gut. I sat on Caleb's couch, my phone clutched in my hand, the warmth of his kiss still lingering on my lips. He looked at me, his brow furrowed, sensing the shift. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice soft but urgent. I couldn't speak. I played the voicemail again, letting him hear it. Her voice was calm, controlled, the way it always was when she was trying not to break. "Elliot, your dad's hurt some things. We need to talk. Now." The words "some things" felt like a noose tightening around my neck. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Just put a hand on my shoulder, steady and warm. "You don't have to call back tonight," he said. "You can take your time." But I couldn't. I knew my parents' me dad's anger, my mom's quiet disappointment. They'd heard something, maybe from Ethan, maybe from someone who'd seen me with Caleb. And now they were waiting. expecting me to explain, to confess, to beg for forgiveness. I stood, pacing the small apartment, my mind racing. They know, I said, my voice shaking. They know about me. About us. Caleb stood too, stepping in front of me, his hands on my arms. Hey, look at me. Whatever they know, whatever they think, it doesn't change who you are. You're still you, Elliot. And you're enough. I wanted to believe him, but fear was louder. You don't get it, I said, pulling away. My dad'll disown me. He'll call it sin. Call me broken. And my mom, she'll just stand there, letting him. Caleb's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with pain, like he was reliving his own past. I know what that's like, he said. My dad did the same. But you can't let them define you. You can't let them take this thing we have away. I stopped pacing, my breath ragged. What if I'm not strong enough? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What if I can't do this? He stepped closer, his hands cupping my face, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. You are, he said. You're stronger than you know. And I'm here. Okay. We'll do this together. I leaned into him, my forehead against his. And for a moment, the fear receded. But it came back when I called my mom the next morning. Her voice was colder than I'd ever heard. Elliot, your father's heard rumors. About you and someone. Is it true? I froze, my heart pounding. What did you hear? I asked, dodging. Don't play games, she said. Are you involved with a man? The question was a blade, and I felt it cut. I wanted to lie, to say it was a mistake. But Caleb's words echoed in my head. You're enough. So I took a breath and said, yes. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then she said, come home. This weekend. We need to talk in person. And she hung up. I went to Caleb's that night, my nerves frayed. He pulled me into a hug, his arms a safe haven. You don't have to go, he said. You don't owe them anything. But I did. I owed myself the chance to face them, to say the truth out loud, even if it broke everything. So I went, taking a bus back to Ohio, the hours stretching like years. When I walked into my childhood home, the air was thick with tension. My dad sat in his armchair, his Bible open, his face like stone. My mom stood behind him, her hands clasped, her eyes avoiding mine. Elliot, my dad said, his voice low, controlled. Is it true? Are you living in sin? I swallowed, my hands shaking. I'm not living in sin, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm living as me. I'm gay, Dad. And I'm in love. The words hung there, raw and true. And for the first time, I didn't want to take them back. My dad's face twisted, anger and pain warring in his eyes. You're choosing this, he said. You're choosing to turn your back on God, on us. No, I said, my voice rising. I'm choosing to be honest. I'm choosing to live. My mom started to cry, silent tears that hurt more than my dad's anger. Elliot, please, she said. You can change. You can come back to us. I don't want to change, I said, tears burning my own eyes. I just want you to love me. They didn't. Not that day. My dad told me to leave, to not come back until I was right. My mom didn't stop him. I walked out, my heart shattered but strangely light, like I'd finally set something free. Back in Philly, Caleb was waiting. I told him everything, my voice breaking, and he held me, his arms strong and sure. You did it, he said, his voice full of pride. You were brave. I lost them, I said, my face buried in his chest. You didn't lose yourself, he said, and you've got me. Months later, I was still rebuilding. Ethan and I talked again, and though it was awkward, he came around, apologizing for his reaction. I just didn't want you to get hurt, he said. But Caleb, he's different with you. Happier. I was happier too. Caleb and I moved slowly, learning each other, building something real. I wasn't fully out. Not yet. But I was getting there. One step at a time. And every night, when I fell asleep next to him, I felt it, the freedom I'd been chasing, the love I'd been afraid to claim. It wasn't perfect. The world still had its claws, its judgments, its cages. But with Caleb by my side, I knew I could face it. Because I wasn't just Elliot, the scared kid from Ohio. I was Elliot, the man who'd chosen himself and the man who'd chosen me.